Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Gargan. Today, I'm delighted to welcome for a second time an accomplished entrepreneur from the world of biotechnology and pharmaceuticals from Wisconsin, USA, Mr. Justin Byers. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Justin is the founder and chief executive officer of Axio BioPharma. So, Justin, a few questions for you, and then we come to Axio. You spent over a decade across companies like Fujifilm, Diosynth Biotechnologies, Cambrix, and others. What were some of the defining lessons from those experiences that shaped your entrepreneurial thinking?
Yeah, I mean, a great question. I mean, honestly, regardless of the company that I worked for, a few things that just kept coming up over and over again. And one of those was that the science kept getting better. We kept kind of making new, better discoveries, and the instruments kept getting better. But one of the big challenges that kept popping up was that the information connecting it all stayed broken. I mean, you could only move as quickly as you could share information with teammates, with partners. And every time you moved information between teams and organizations, it seemed like some of that context would get lost in the handoff. So that was one of the big lessons that I learned is that the real bottleneck in the industry is not the science, it's really the data layer. And that's a problem that I didn't see anybody really owning and nobody was trying to fix it. And so that's exactly where we're focused at Axio.
Very interesting. You co-founded Axio with Brian Statz, who came from a cybersecurity background. How did the combination of biotech and cybersecurity influence Axio's architecture?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. So you wouldn't think it would be a good pairing at first, but Brian's background, in addition to being one of the early founding engineers at CrowdStrike, he also has a bioinformatics background.
Mhm.
But his CrowdStrike background in particular was very helpful for us thinking about the data infrastructure that
Mm.
the pharma industry really needs, and from a variety of different ways. First and foremost, when we started thinking about all this buzz around AI models and AI technology, we recognized these all have the same weak link. They're all dependent on the amount and the quality of data that flows into these models. And if nobody's really owning how do you connect all these different fragmented, siloed systems that hold our data, how could you ever hope to kind of flow that full context and that full stack of information into any of these models? And so that's where Brian was able to leverage, hey, wait a minute, I built something like this before. While it was for the IT security space, we were doing the same thing, connecting different fragmented systems so that we could flow IT security across an interconnected ecosystem. So while it's a little bit
Yeah.
different, the underlying principles of creating on-site nodes, of creating kind of a federated framework was very, very similar. And so that's exactly the experience and the knowledge that we used here is we didn't want to go to pharma, ask them to give up, their crown jewels, their secret sauce. So we learned that we had to take this kind of federated approach to bringing AI to their data, as well as we leveraged his past experience in the security space to know that we have to do this in a secure and governed fashion where we keep that information locked down and governed in the way that biopharma expects.
Mm.
So we took a lot of these same principles that Brian had used previously, and now we're applying them to the pharma space.
Fascinating.
And so that distributed systems, thinking in kind of a secured way, is all being built into the federated framework that Axio is building here.
Very interesting. Let's come to Axio BioPharma now. For
Yeah.
listeners and viewers outside biotech world, why is fragmented process data such a massive problem in biomanufacturing?
Yeah. Uh, for those who are not living and breathing this, it might not seem obvious, but if I had to boil it down, in the life sciences and in the biopharma space, man, we like to make things complicated. And it's no different in our software systems. So we've got dozens of different systems, all designed to do kind of individualized tasks. We have systems that store our in-process data, other systems that store our historical data, some for our quality systems, and they all do great individualized tasks that they were designed to do, but they also all have the same kind of problem as well, which is they don't talk to each other.
Mm,
So imagine having a dozen different systems, all with a separate kind of fragment of the overall picture or a separate piece of
mm,
the puzzle. And when they don't talk to each other, it's hard to form that complete picture. And that's exactly what Axio is trying to solve here is we're trying to connect all these different fragmented siloed systems so that you can see, okay, what is all the data that we have amongst these dozens of different systems? While at the same time, we're not creating a data lake. We're simply connecting the systems that pharma companies contract manufacturers already have today so that they can view all their information in one interface
mm,
and make it comparable so that regardless of what system that information is getting pulled from,
mm,
you see it all in one single data language and you see it all in one single spot.
yeah.
So that way, patterns become more visible. You can understand your process information more completely, more wholly, and
Mm,
then you can also transfer that knowledge to your manufacturing partners more swiftly.
mm. You describe Axio as not building AI models, but building the coordination layer that makes AI possible.
Yep.
Can you help me understand this philosophy?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of talk and a lot of buzz about AI right now, and it seems kind of counterintuitive that we wouldn't be building AI models, but that's not where we see our ability to really bring value to the market.
Mm,
There are plenty of AI models in the biotech and biopharma space, and the weak link is really the underlying data that flows into these. You need high quantity, high quality data to make these models actually produce the value that they're promised.
mm,
Uh, and so that's where our focus is on the coordination layer and making sure the information is fully structured and fully available to actually be fed into these models.
mm,
So a lot of pharma already have very sophisticated models that they've either invested in themselves or
mm,
they've developed in themselves with their very talented data science teams. What
mm,
they don't have is they don't have access to the amount of data and the quality of data that they need to run these to their full potential.
mm,
And so that's where connecting this fragmented siloed ecosystem is really what's needed. We need to bring that information together so you've got a complete picture and then bring the models to that complete data. And so
mm.
that's exactly what we're doing. So a
Well
little bit
said.
different
Yeah,
than building out AI models
yeah,
themselves.
absolutely. Tell me, what does vendor neutral truly mean in practice? And why is neutrality essential for your business
Yeah.
model?
Yeah. So this is one of the key things that we're focused on is vendor neutrality. And what I mean by that is that if we're going to be connecting pharma companies to contract manufacturers, as well as to some of the underlying software and instrument vendors that are out there, we need to make sure that we're not choosing one partner over another for any kind of competitive or strategic partner reasons. We want to take a very neutral approach to everybody that's in our ecosystem. And that goes from pharma partners to all the different other organizations that I just described.
Mm,
And that's important because if a pharma sponsor seeing something similar being built by one of the largest, contract manufacturers, there would always be a little bit of resistance or hesitation towards, wait a minute, are you actually just building this so you've got more information for your manufacturing side?
Mm,
And so Axio is very, very keen on making sure that we're not building out CDMO services. We're not building out any kind of equipment manufacturing or raw material manufacturing. So we're keeping a very neutral approach and bringing the right partner on the manufacturing side to the right pharma sponsor. And we're simply allowing that information to flow from point A to point B, but doing it 90% faster than the manual kind of current process of gathering it up and logging into, a dozen different systems.
amazing. But tell me, why can't large manufacturers themselves become the trusted coordination layer for the industry? And why do they need Axio?
Yeah. And so large manufacturers, I mean, you can think of, there's a lot of examples out there, everybody from organizations like Lonza and Thermo and others
Mm,
like that. Could they build something like this? Absolutely. But it's where you wouldn't be able to really pitch that then to a competitor and be
mm,
able to keep that neutrality of yes, you can work with us, and we're not going to try and take that manufacturing as well. That
mm,
becomes a very tough sell if a very large contract manufacturer is trying to do this same exact play.
mm,
There's this trust component to where does the data actually end up at, and what is the underlying motives? Are you trying to just get more of the manufacturing to kind of flow into your business? And so we can see some examples in the market where large contract manufacturers tried to acquire and did successfully acquire some of these software enterprise systems and then later divested them because that's exactly what pharma partners kind of started to see as, wait a
mm.
minute, I don't know if I can really believe that you're not going to be neutral here. There's obviously some underlying motives. So
Amazing.
that's what's different about us is
Yeah.
we don't have that manufacturing side. So we're completely neutral in
Correct.
how we align pharma to a manufacturing
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah. Well, that's very important. But Justin, tell me, everyone is talking about AI in the pharma world today. What are most companies misunderstanding about AI readiness?
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes back to some of the points that I talked about before, which is at the end of the day, a lot of people think of AI readiness as having the right model or perhaps even having the right team. And
Mm,
that's a great place to start, but that's also where we see a lot of stall is at that early pilot stage of, okay, we've got a great model,
mm,
but that's really only the first point, and it's from my view, it's probably the less important part. Really, the real value and the readiness starts with the data and
mm,
your comparability and your full context that you have around your data.
mm,
If you're feeding in just kind of partially half-baked information into your models, you're going to only get partial kind of half-baked answers out, and you're not going to get the most out of it, regardless
mm,
of how great that AI model is. So many pilots, they look really great, they look clean, they look like they're going to work really well, and then
mm,
you start questioning, wait a minute, why are we not getting the results we expect? Well,
mm,
the gap
mm.
often is because there's a data coordination layer, data context, and data structuring problem that is that big gap there.
Very interesting. But do you see AI transforming process development and manufacturing over the next few years once the data coordination process improves?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely see that there's a real opportunity for AI to come in on a variety of different areas and to start providing some compounding value. Uh, One of the big challenges, especially in the biopharma space, is on scalability of manufacturing processes, going from making early R&D batches to making commercially scalable manufacturing processes. That's
Hmm.
quite a challenging task right now because you working with living cells, they don't always scale in a linear fashion. And that's an area where AI models, if they have the right data with the full process context and fully structured, we believe that they can really make some vast improvements, save months and millions of dollars.
Mm.
And then on the back end, just as much time saving and cost savings could occur as well
Mm.
when you're reacting to unexpected events. So when deviations happen, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what actually happened versus what we planned to have happen. And that's where we believe two things. One, AI can help with the root cause analysis, be able to come in and help us make sense out of some of these deviations and
Mm.
help us identify corrective actions. But we also believe that there's an opportunity to have proactive real-time monitoring using AI models to catch deviations before they even occur,
Mm.
to catch trends where it's starting to go in a direction where maybe the human eye doesn't fully recognize that this could lead to a deviation, but
Mm.
the models have seen enough of that fully structured, high quality data to recognize, wait a minute, we need to make an adjustment here before we have an unplanned deviation.
Amazing. How difficult is it technically to standardize meaning across completely different enterprise systems?
Uh, Very, very difficult.
Hmm.
It's genuinely a very hard task. I chuckle a little bit because when you start thinking about how complex it is,
Hmm.
it's amazing to think about the challenge that we have before us. We did not pick a easy problem to solve here. The industry as a whole, I mentioned, has a dozen different software enterprise systems. Well, each one of those software systems has a dozen different choices on
Mm.
which software to use within that kind of given enterprise. So
Mm.
whether that's a historian or an electronic lab notebook. And then each site typically has a different software system, so a different IT stack.
Mm.
And then each pharma company then works with hundreds of contract manufacturers and testing sites. So that starts getting exponentially more and more complex.
Mm.
But that's also where the real opportunity is. If we have an interconnected system where we have a translation layer and you can immediately see information in the data language as you describe it, then we have the opportunity to accelerate the handoff of information between teams and between organizations,
Mm.
as well as to make some this information comparable, regardless of what company is doing the R&D or what company is doing the clinical manufacturing.
Very
You can actually
interesting.
compare
Yeah,
apples to apples.
very interesting. Do you think biomanufacturing infrastructure will eventually resemble financial networks or cloud computing ecosystems in terms of interoperability?
I think so.
Hmm.
I think that's the right comparison. I mean, in finance and in other sectors, they've kind of figured out how that value moves between, thousands of different nodes or institutions. That in the beginning, I mean, there wasn't that those shared data pipelines or those shared rails to allow that flow of information.
Mm.
And I think that's similar in biomanufacturing. Right now, every connection that we're building, we have
Mm.
to build it custom. It's bespoke. It's being built from scratch. But as we continue to build out this network, I think we'll see something very similar to what the IT security and financial networks scene is that we'll be able to have similar kind of shared generalizations that can be shared with the overall ecosystem.
Mm.
So
Mm.
the future does look like, neutral um, uh, data pipelines where that process information can flow between sponsors and manufacturing partners. And it's will be seen as kind of routine transactions that kind of clear and go back and forth.
Mm,
And we want to build those data pipelines to allow that to
mm,
happen.
Well said. I have time for two more questions for you, Justin.
Sure, sure.
How does operating a non-GMP antibody production facility help accelerate the development of your software infrastructure business?
Yeah, that's a great question, and sometimes the immediate value there or the connection isn't super clear. So happy to touch on that for a second. So
Mm,
at Axio, we do have a high throughput antibody lab. That's how we actually started up our business. We initially started with our high throughput antibody services, and what that gives us is a couple of things. One, it gives us that operational kind of reality and credibility that we're not just the software side of things. We
mm,
actually know how this translates to real world laboratory work. And so we're not just kind of theorizing about these problems. We can apply these same connections to our equipment, to our databases for our own internal projects, and we can see how these really work or don't work, and we need to go back to the drawing board.
mm,
And and that is, I can't tell you how many times that has been super, super helpful to actually just
mm,
work through some of these early connections on our own
mm,
equipment.
mm,
The second is kind of for the overall network is the relationships we're building. So Forge really opens up that door to a customer where they're starting in that ideation phase of, hey, we've got some ideas for molecules. We want to see if they work. Can we go from in silico designs to actual physical material? And
mm,
we can help them with that transition, but it doesn't stop just there. The next
mm,
step is they need to connect with a manufacturing partner to do larger manufacturing. And that's
mm,
where we can offer not only that connection with our network, but we can also help streamline the flow of information from their lab to that manufacturing partner to help
mm,
them accelerate their journey to that first clinical batch. And that's
mm,
something that nobody else in the industry is able to do right now.
mm. Amazing. And my last question for you, Justin. How important is it for infrastructure companies to deeply understand operational realities of the industries they serve?
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly, it's everything.
Mm,
Uh, a lot of the infrastructure companies tend to get it wrong, and you can't fix a coordination problem when you've only read about it or you've only theorized about it. And so, again, that's where Axio's architecture and what we're building out here, we're working very, very closely, not only with our own laboratory, but
mm,
very closely with a select group of early pharma sponsors to make sure we're designing this with the people who live and breathe these problems every single day.
mm,
And so that way, the infrastructure we're building earns that early trust with the operations teams that are going to be using it for years to come.
mm,
And I think that's kind of completely different than some of the typical approaches to kind of building the infrastructure and then getting it out there in the network. We want to take a very close partnership and relationship with our pharma sponsors.
mm. Well said. And on that note, Justin, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been. I mean, this is not an area of my expertise, but I learned many, many new things from you in our conversation about how you're really supporting so many pharma companies and helping them to be able to really integrate so many of their data points with others' organizations. Thank you so much for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.